And it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Troy Leinster. He's a local boy, grew up here in Brisbane. He has worked and studied abroad at various points, keeps coming home here to keep his roots in shape and to improve our international connections. So he's going to talk with us today about his learnings over the years, working with many different people in many different situations about font development process. So, thank you, Troy.
Hello, Brits Vegas. It's nice to be here at home, and today I just want to share with you a little bit about my type design process and why it's so important to me as a one-man band. So my process is something that I think about quite often, and I'm constantly refining. Of course, productivity is the main catalyst. By breaking down such large projects into small bite-sized chunks, I can save time, which means more fonts. Establishing a standard of work, a consistent standard of work, helps build your reputation. And by having a process in place, helps free up my mental space, which gives me more energy for creativity. And of course, it encourages you to explore different tools and processes, which in turn helps with professional growth. And lastly, it reassures clients they're in safe hands. My type design process is five stages, often not happening in that order. But starting with the ideation phase, where I'm collecting ideas, prototyping, where I'm exploring those ideas further, the design phase, where I'm committing to an idea and figuring out the puzzle, so to speak, the engineering phase, where I'm testing, building the fonts and testing, and then lastly, the publication phase, where I'm releasing and promoting. I'd like to acknowledge that my process has been developed from learning from many of my mentors and teachers, my time at H&Co, and also from coaching other type designers and through building a typeface. So the first stage, ideation, that I mentioned, it can sometimes be a day, a week, or a few months. The process, basically, I'm spending 30 minutes in the morning just dumping down ideas. Has anyone ever read or completed The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron? So this is kind of based on her morning pages concept, which I found really useful. Basically, the idea is you're dumping down stream of consciousness each morning, and it allows you to collect your ideas and then revisit them at a later stage, creating that detachment to allow you to see it in with different eyes, I guess. So I kind of pinched that idea and use it for developing ideas, because often I'd sit down and think, what am I going to create? And I would just be blank. So this takes the pressure off one idea and allows me to dump down many ideas, and over time, the good ideas, or the ideas that I feel are relevant, will bubble to the top, and that's what I'll take to the next stage. I use pen and paper to sketch my ideas purely because I want to capture the process and the thoughts that I'm having without the temptation to erase or perfect or judge. So again, the idea for me is just dump things down on the page, not worrying about what they look like, but try and capture the thinking and the process along the way. Often when I look back at these, it's parts of the process that are quite valuable rather than the end result. So once I have an idea that I might want to explore a little further, I then will use the iPad and I just use, Notability. So it's not a brush or tool, anything like that. It just is really mimicking the pen. I just use it to quickly sketch out a headline or a paragraph. So it allows me to basically trace a sketch or a letter and repeat that very quickly. And then I'll digitize a word really roughly, not necessarily one that has a meaning, but just a word, and I'll give it a number rather than spend time trying to figure out a name, which, as type designers know, takes a very long time. So at this point, I'll pop that idea on the pile and wait until I'm ready to explore it further. The prototyping phase, I use what I call my extended controls proof. So the basic controls, you can see the lowercase NOP and uppercase HOD, which are probably quite familiar to most people making type. I wanted to create a proof that's really quick to build a few other characters from those main controls so I can generate something that looks like a typeface pretty quickly. So here you can see once I have my lowercase n, I've got the vertical stroke for most of the other characters and the arch on the lowercase n. Once I have my n, I can quickly build my H, M, and U. I've got the right side of my A and lowercase g there. Once I have my lowercase o, I can quickly make my P and D, take that for the bowl of my A and G, and create their E and C. And I can quickly scale that lowercase o up as a starting point for my uppercase O and D and C. And the other shape group, I want to include a diagonal. So once I have my lowercase v, I can scale that up to get my uppercase, or a starting point for my uppercase A, and rotate that, uppercase V, and rotate that for my A. The reason I include the A, G, and E, and sometimes S in here is generally they're the first letters to kind of fill in when you're exploring weight. So you kind of want to know how far you can push it before you get too far in. So my extended controls proof is about 8 pages long, and this is an example of the art pages. So basically the letters are up nice and large, so I can look at them in detail and make any changes here that I might find while I'm looking through the proof. This page just uses my basic controls. So here I'm looking at the counterforms of my lowercase n, o, and p to get my proportions right. With this proof, I can also look at the spacing with my uppercase to lowercase. I can get a really rough sense of what a paragraph might look like and what the color looks like. And I'm also here checking my word space. So with the rest of those extended controls, I can get a pretty good idea of what a paragraph looks like. Here I've got 2 styles, and I'm assessing the comparison between the uppercase and the ascender. And I've got a paragraph of text here that I include that has mixed weights, so I can look at the contrast between the 2 weights and also assess whether the X height of the boulder weight looks good in comparison to the thin or the light. And finally, I include a page with a number of point sizes which I expect the typeface to be used. So I can check the spacing is looking good and also how the contrast is behaving. So just with those two masters or two weights, I can then quickly interpolate and extrapolate an entire family to just see how far I can push the weights before they break. So here's an example of my recent typeface where I've just, I started with two masters and I extrapolated the hell out of it to see how far it would go before, see how heavy I can go and how light it could become. So once I have that, just with that basic character set, I can name my weights and do some basic artwork to make it look like a finished typeface. So I call this a font seed or a type seed. And this is something I can kind of file away to show custom clients or as a potential retail release in the future. So the goal is to really, use a very limited character set to get a finished result within maybe a week or so. So the design phase for me is really kind of a bit like a puzzle or solving problems. So this is the phase where I'm kind of exploring different letterform possibilities and making decisions. Sometimes it can be a little nerve-wracking because you don't really know how long this process is going to take, but by having the process, it allows me to kind of relax and know that, by following a process, I'll get to the right result. It's also the part of the stage of the process where I'm establishing the character set, what alternates I might include. Right, yeah, so I'm always very cautious about adding alternates and ligatures, things like that, because as you can see here, with my A and G, with 4 masters, if I decide to add an alternate, I have to draw space and kern and additional 8 glyphs, which adds a lot of time to the project. So I'm very cautious. Want to make sure that whatever I add is going to be quite useful. During this phase, I often also go back to pen and paper to figure out forms that might fit better. I just find it so much quicker to dump my ideas down on the page than to push nodes around in Robofont to try and figure out, or explore different shapes. So, like I mentioned before, I break down all the different parts of the character set into small chunks. You can see the top left-hand corner is my extended controls proof, and then I'm moving through my alphabetics, my figures, and monetary punctuation, etc. So whenever I get to a particular stage where I think maybe a direction, I'm changing direction, I can always know where I'm at and what it's going to affect, so I can kind of go back to a particular proof and revisit it and continue on. So, so I'm not getting lost in the process. The text that I use for proofing was published by Jonathan Hoefler. You can find it by searching for how to proof a typeface. Basically, there's text for uppercase, lowercase, and small caps. So this is an example of the text. Basically, each character in the alphabet that you want to proof, you can easily find it by looking for that particular character. So each sentence starts with, obviously, the A, B, C, D, etc. So whenever you're looking for a character, you can find it really easily. So for example, if I was proofing my lowercase g, I can go to the G sentence. I can see my G next to a flat character, my G next to a round character, between 2 flats, between 2 rounds, at the end of a word after a flat, and at the end of a word after a round, and also a double. So just within that one sentence, I can get a lot of information and judge that character pretty well. So every character in the typeface is proofed in context. So any changes, I mark it up on my art proof and go through probably about 3 to 4 rounds before finalizing that section, but it really depends on, you know, how complex the characters are in that section. So one phase of the design process that I've really tried to focus on recently is the kerning phase. It takes a really long time, and it's at the end of the process, so it often I often don't have time to kind of think about how it can be improved. So I've recently moved over to glyphs for kerning, so I can kern in context, starting with words and proofing it in sentences. I group my letters into shape groups, and I was just talking to Tobias before, and he informed me that he invented this this way of kerning. So again, thank you for that. And I think it just makes it really clear that a lot of the type design process comes from other people that have done it before you. So it's good to know that. So here, the benefit of doing it this way is I can look at, say, a round up against maybe a V, and I can expect that the kern for an OV and a DV and perhaps a QV, they would share a similar kern. So this helps speed up the process by being able to make informed decisions of what those values might be. The LTJ is also another interesting pair. I can kind of get a bit of an idea, because there's similar shapes, what those kerns might be. I start with my alphabetics, I kern them first, and then move through the figures, and lastly the punctuation. So the engineering phase is basically building the fonts and testing them in different applications. So I got Stephen Nixon from ATypI to make me what he calls a build pipeline. So I basically can just type make in my terminal, and it will build all the fonts I need for my desktop, web, app, and trial fonts. And it will also run it through Font Bakery and give me a report on whether it's picked up anything that needs to be fixed. So basically, once I get the okay from Font Bakery, I'm then testing the OpenType features, the interpolations, the kerning and the interpolated kerns. I'm testing the fonts in all the popular design apps and the Safari and Chrome. So the last phase, the publication phase, just when you think your job is done as a type designer, you have to kind of then put on your graphic design hat and marketing hat and kind of start again. So I developed this, what I call my font promotion worksheet, which is basically for each font I try and establish a unique selling point, a bunch of glyphs that I think I can show off, my hero glyphs, and also try to identify any hidden functionality that I need to promote. Then there's the pricing of the fonts, establishing what the individual styles are going to be, bundles and family price, writing a description for the typeface, the functionality and potential use cases, and then of course developing the artwork for the specimen, website, Instagram, newsletter, things like that. So from that font development workshop, I try to sketch out as many ideas that I can to basically show off those different points. And so I just sketch a bunch of ideas and kind of use this as a bit of a social media schedule. I build everything in squares, mainly because that's the best way for Instagram. So I just make all of my artwork in squares, which allows me to then keep my website up to date and prevents me from having to spend more time resizing things. And of course, for my newsletter as well, I can just slot those images in, change them up, and which just saves me a ton of time. So to wrap up, developing a process that works for you is an important part of communicating who you are as a designer and what your type is all about. Thank you.
Okay, well, we do have time for a few questions.
Thanks for your chat. As a very novice student, would you say, I know with a lot of things it's about just creating and just start doing, but would you say in your experience, learn the foundations and the etiquettes prior to just starting? Like if I was to just start to personally create a typeface without learning all or as many foundational etiquettes as I can, do you think I'd be sort of backtracking as well after that? Like, do you have any thoughts on the approach of making my first typefaces?
Yeah, I think just making and getting in there and giving it a go, excuse me, is a great approach. When I started, there wasn't much education in type design, so I kind of had to pack up my bags and travel to find it. But now there's just so much available that you can do online. So I would definitely look online for a course that suits you to kind of get started, just even as an introduction. That would definitely be the way I'd approach it. And then really it's kind of, like you said, it's a self-learning process.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
I have a question as well. So you kind of cued that with the earlier part of the presentation. You postponed the naming, but how do you go about the naming?
Yeah, well, like I said at the beginning, I just give it a number because I don't want to think about it. And generally, what really happens is it's not until the end that I start panicking that I don't have a name. So it's then I kind of put everything on hold and I'm just searching. I've been trying to develop a way to come up with a name, but it just hasn't. Every time I come up with one that I think is fantastic, I just Google it and it already exists. Seriously, everything exists. So, yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, Matthew Carter's famous for having said that naming the font was the hardest part.
Yeah, the numbers are a really good idea for early on. Just give it a number and don't think about it. But do you, for real, stick to that process? Because I feel like a fucking shambles in my process. I just keep going until, I don't know, till it's done. But like that seems like really quite strict and regimented, and I can imagine that as a framework for developing something. It's like, yeah, like I'm not doing any more controls because the controls aren't right. All right, we've done the controls, I'm moving on to uppercase. So are you quite strict about that process?
I'm not strict, but I definitely rely on it. So the prototyping with my standard controls, I'll often add in additional letters to make it work, or maybe, you know, perhaps make it look good at that stage. With breaking down the character set, yes, I'm pretty, only because it's so easy to lose track of where you're at, and I tend to do things. Well, recently a student said to me, "Oh, I've just finished my typeface, but I'm really nervous." And I was like, "Well, why are you nervous?" And he said, "Well, I'm not sure I've done everything." And so I think if you approach a character set and you don't really have those checks in place at the end of the process, I kind of want to know that I've seen it all for my own comfort, So I am pretty strict with that, but it changes a little bit along the way, yeah.
Thanks, Troy. It's nice to see it sort of fleshed out. You were part of the Typism Summit and you shared some of that process with the audience, and you very generously gave away some of those kinds of control worksheets and things. And I know you've started to evolve from being a typeface designer to thinking of yourself as a foundry. So just to kind of pick up on the business side of things, can you talk a little bit more about the name change and what your sort of paradigm shift has been to go from Troy, the typeface designer, to the foundry?
To foundry. Well, up until recently, I've really tried to stay as much as an individual type designer rather than pretending to be behind this big foundry. Purely because I think type design now, there's so many type designers, it's really about building relationships with graphic designers and other designers, so I really wanted to keep that personal touch. But recently I released someone else's typeface, so it's put me in a position where I kind of have to now say we or, us or something like that. But I'm trying to kind of balance, keep that personal touch there so people feel comfortable working with an individual, and I'm more aware that type designers are just like graphic designers, and we're not hiding anywhere. You can kind of reach out to us and we can collaborate.
You mentioned on your ideation process, some of them take one day, others take months. What type of process do you have to go back into the ideation pile and pick up or continue the process and go through the other steps and follow up? How do you handle when something has taken months and you need to find that inspiration again and that passion for it?
Yeah. Just to kind of clarify, the process, like the longest I've done this is 3 months, where I sketch each morning for 30 minutes or so. Basically, I have a list of things on my phone that I think about during the day. Oh, what if this was like that, or whatever. So when I sit down, I've got something to sketch. But they're really quick sketches. They're not like trying to figure anything out. It's like, what if the A was like that, or it's not. I'm not trying to think of a typeface in each morning. I'm just sketching, and then by allowing them to pile up, I can flick through these still to this day, and by that, with having that detachment, it's kind of like you're looking at someone else's work, so you can kind of judge it a bit better. I think you can look at things and go, oh, I didn't see that, or I think often we get too close to our work and we don't have the time to let it all digest and detach a little bit from it. So that's where I find that process valuable. But I haven't done that for a while, and I sometimes will do it for a week and kind of give up. So, I'm not claiming to be someone that does this every day of the year, but I think, there will be a period of time where I jump back into it and to collect more ideas. And I think too, some of the ideas that you put down are not quite relevant right now, but might be in the future. You kind of got to wait for the right time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Troy Leinster.